and you're welcome to this session. Tonight, we'll be looking at ACT 2021 nomination. ACT simply means Australia Capital Territory. The nomination, that's what we'll be looking at. So we want to start with the migration planning levels for 2021, 2020-2021 financial year. So this, according to the Department of Home Affairs, this is what has been planned for the year. So the emphasis will be on regional and state territory nominated. So 11,200 allocations have been given to regional sponsorship. That is regional sponsorship, 491 visa. Then state territory nominated, 11,200 allocations have been given to visa 190. So you need to understand that the number that we have this year is very small. Now, for ACT nomination places for this financial year is for 491 is 598 places, 598 nominations available for 491. Then for 190, 702 places. As at 1st of January, 552 places were available at 1st of January this year. So that is 552 places are left to be taken. Under 190, 452 places. And they've already done some other nominations and drawings after these days. So the next one should be early this month. You can expect that the number will have been reduced by now. So to tell you that the numbers will go fast. Now, they have what is called critical list, skill list. And they've already allocated some places under each occupation. So for policy and planning manager, it's only available under 491, and they have less than 10 places. What that means is once that the number is filled up, so they won't, they will take this occupation off the list. Then ICT project manager, ICT managers, they have less than 5 places. Customer service manager and the contact manager, they are in the same group, they have less than 5 places. The list, we have management accountant, taxation accountant, they have 10 places. Then graphic designer, illustrator, web designer, they have less than 5 places. Engineers, civil engineer, geotechnical engineer, quantity surveyor, they have less than 5 places. You can see that the number is not much. Early childhood, they have less than 5, and so on and so forth. Nurses, they have 10 places available for nurses. Then ICT business analyst and system analyst, they have less than 15 places available. Then other ICT occupations, such as analyst, programmer, developer, programmer, software engineer, software tester, they have less than 40 places. And so on and so forth. So I will encourage you to check the list to see if your occupation is there, and also to see the number of places available. This will help you to prepare your mind whether ACT is a place to be or to relocate to. I really would like to encourage everybody that's thinking of relocating to ACT to first think about the matrix system to see what points he or she can get before relocating to ACT. So skip this. There are other occupations there. We have social worker is there, community health worker is there, recreational officer is there, welfare worker is there. All these trade-related occupations are there. Program or project administrator is there. Contract administrator is there. Youth worker is there, and so on and so forth. Now, let's go to ACT nomination streams. Now, there are two streams, as you know. We have 491 and also we have 190. The difference is 491 is a provisional visa, which means the holder of this visa will have to stay in regional area, any regional area in Australia for 3 years, and then 53,000 plus for each year for 3 years before he or she will be eligible for 191, which is PR. Then there is also 190 stream, which is direct PR, is PR. So if you have that visa, you can decide to relocate almost immediately from that state if you don't wish to stay in a city. So, but for you to be eligible for any of this stream, you must meet certain criteria, and that's what you'll be looking at. And you must meet certain criteria before you can use any of this stream. Then one good thing about ACT is that they also have a pathway for PhD graduates, people who studied in ACT, in any ACT university, whether in the last 2 years. It does not matter whether the individual is here in Australia or elsewhere. Such person is eligible for this nomination, either 491 or 190 under PhD stream. But of course, the applicant must have suitable skill assessment in any occupation in the eligible skill occupation list. What that means is that, you know, Australia has 3 skill occupation lists, and even now 4. They have what is called MTSS list, that is medium and long-term strategic skill occupation list, which is mainly for skill level 1 and skill level 2 occupations. Then also they have short-term skill occupation list. That one is for people that want to nominate 190 or that want to apply under 491. Then they also have regional skill occupation list, which is available under regional sponsorship. Now, what ACT has said is that if you are a PhD holder and you finished from any university, any universities in ACT, you are eligible for PhD stream, so long you have an occupation on Australia's skill occupation list and you have an assessment. So for example, we do occupations such as maybe telecommunication engineer is not on their list. It's not on the critical list of ACT. However, if you have an assessment as a telecom engineer, telecom network engineer, you will still be able to apply for either 190 or 491 in ACT, provided that you meet the 65 points requirement and you are not subject to matrix system. You are not subject to ACT matrix system. So this is actually good for those who have studied in ACT, who have done PhD in ACT in the last 2 years. It doesn't matter whether you are here onshore or offshore. Now let's look at ACT nomination 491 Canberra requirements, mandatory requirements. First, you and your family members must have lived in Canberra for 3 months before applying for this nomination. This is different from meeting your Department of Home Affairs point system. You must meet 65 points. I believe by now we know how to calculate 65 points. So once you meet 65 points and you want to apply for 491, that is on your own, you must meet 50 points. Then the state will give you extra 15 points. So in addition to this, you and your family members must have lived in Canberra for 3 months before applying for nomination. That's first. Then another one is that your occupation must be on the critical list or on 482 visa working in your nominated occupation. There is a visa called 482 visa. That's it's called TSS, Temporary Skill Shortage Visa. This employer-sponsored visa. For example, if your employer sponsored you as let's say telecom network engineer, and you know that telecom network engineer is not on the ACT critical list, you can still apply for 491, provided that you meet other requirements. So you can still apply for it. That is if you are on the 482 visa. But generally speaking, your occupation must be on critical list before you can apply for this visa. And we've already seen the occupations, some of the occupations that are on critical list. Occupations such as welfare worker, the accountant, social worker, and etc. So long your occupation is on that critical list, and you have lived in Australia, in ACT for 3 months, you and your family members have lived in Australia, ACT for 3 months, and you have proficient or superior English. If you have proficient or superior English is if you score 8888 in IELTS, or proficient English 777, or other English languages tests. So if you have 77 or equivalent in other tests, then you are fine. Then also, you do not have to work in your nominated occupation. What it means is you might have an assessment as an accountant, but you don't have to be working as an accountant. You could be working as a disability support worker, for example. You will still be eligible. So you don't have to be working in your nominated occupation. You must be working in Canberra for 3 months before the date of matrix submission. This is very important. A lot of people do make mistake. Maybe right from the day one they get to Canberra, they express interest in matrix system. What they will look at is the date of submission. So if you submitted your matrix if you submit your application under matrix system right from the one when you entered, so what they will look at eventually is that by the time you are eligible, they will say, well, this person expressed interest when he or she was not eligible. Then you would be disqualified. So you must work 3 months before expressing interest. I hope that is clear. A lot of people do make that mistake. They express interest with the hope that by the time they spend 3 months, they will be eligible by then. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to wait until you have worked for 3 months and live there for 3 months before expressing interest. So these are the requirements for applying for Canberra 491 nomination. So let's look at 190. 190 is similar in this. The only difference is for 190, you must have lived for 6 months. And also, you must be working full-time, emphasis on full-time. Full-time means minimum of 35 hours per week. You must be working full-time in Canberra 6 months before the date of matrix submission. So emphasis is on full-time and also on 6 months. And full-time means 35 hours. You can combine 2 jobs. So long the 2 jobs will give you 35 hours at the end of the day, you are still fine. So every other requirements remain the same as 491. Let's now look at ACT Matrix. ACT Matrix, for the allocated points based on some criteria they've set. For example, ACT residents, if you have lived in ACT for 5 years, you will have 25 points. Your 5 years, the maximum weeks that they expect you to be out of ACT is 6 weeks. You must not be outside ACT for more than 6 weeks in a year. All right, and also you can be working. Maybe you primarily you must be working in ACT, but your work probably may take you outside ACT, but it should not be more than few days. All right. So 25 points is allocated to 5 years of residence in ACT. Then lowest point allocated under that is if you have lived in ACT between 1 and 2 years, you have 5 points. If you have lived in ACT for between 1 and 2 years, you have 5 points. Less than 1 year, no point under ACT residence. Then if you have superior or proficient English, you have 5 points. If your partner has superior or proficient English, you will have 5 points. Then if your nominated occupation is on critical list, you have 20 points. What it means is, initially when we started, I showed you the critical list of ACT. If your occupation is on that list, that's 20 points on its own. So for example, if you're a social worker, which is on that list, you have 20 points. Welfare worker, you have 20 points. Accountant, you have 20 points. Whatever your occupation is that is on that list, you have 20 points. Now, length of employment in ACT. If you have worked in ACT for at least 12 months or 12 months plus, you have 10 points. 10 points for working for duration of 12 months plus. In ACT, you have 10 points. Then between 6 months and 12 months, you have 5 points for working in ACT. And the employment, regardless of the employment, whether skill level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever skill level, so long you are working in ACT, you have 10 points and 10 points for 12 months, and 6 to 12 months, you have 5 points. Now, if you're working in your nominated occupation, and that occupation is on critical list, you will have 20 points. You're working in your nominated occupation. For example, accountant is on that list. If you are working as an accountant in ACT, you have 20 points. And that's, that's very good to have 40 points already. You have an occupation on the list. You are working your nominated occupation. So it's always good to work in one's nominated occupation. Now, if your nominated occupation, but you are not working your nominated occupation, but that occupation is on critical list, you have 10 points. So let me explain that. You have an assessment as a social worker, all right? But you are working as a welfare worker. They are not the same occupations. They are different. Both you are working in a skill level 1 to 3 occupation. You have 5 points. Skill level 1 are professional occupations, such as maybe accountant, engineers, occupation that requires minimum of bachelor degree qualification is a skill level 1. Occupation that requires diplomas is skill level 2. Occupation that requires certificate 4 is skill level 3. Then certificate 3 is skill level 4, and so on and so forth. So we need to note that. So for example, I know that to work as a disability support worker, you need to have certificate 3. So it's not a skill level 3, but rather it's a skill level 4. It's a skill level 4. But if you're working as a disability services officer, so you need a diploma, which is a skill level 2. All right. Now, let's go to points allocated for spouses. So now, spouse working 3 months in a critical list with an assessment. We need to take note of that. The spouse occupation is on critical list, and the spouse has an assessment. I will paint a scenario that I know of. Maybe a spouse has a project, he has an assessment as a project or program administrator, and is working in that field with income not less than $26 per hour. That's 15 points. That's 15 points. With skill assessment, income not less than $26. That's 15 points. Then spouse working in any occupation now is 5 points. So any occupation could be whether skill level 1 occupation, 5, 6, whatever it is. That's 5 points. But you can see the difference between an occupation that is on critical list, assessment relevant to their current occupation with income not less than $26 per hour, we get 10 points. What that means is, if, for example, I keep mentioning a telecom network engineer because I know that occupation is not on critical list. There are other occupations that are not there. Occupation such as economist is not there on that list as well. Occupation such as valuer is not on that list. So if you have a spouse who has skill assessment in that occupation and they are working in the same occupation, but remember their occupation is not on their list, it's not on the critical list. So long that their income is not less than $26 per hour, you will get extra 10 points. Okay. Now, If you have a spouse that does not meet 3 months work requirement, that is, the spouse hasn't worked for 3 months in ACT, but at least have a 3-year tertiary education qualification, that is minimum of a bachelor degree or say a postgraduate diploma or advanced diploma is less than 3 years. So postgraduate certificate or postgraduate diploma. Such we are with competent English. Competent English is CCCCs in IELTS or equivalent in other English tests. You will have extra 5 points. Then, if you now have tertiary qualifications, say you have PhD, you have 20 points, MSc, you have 15 points, BSc, you have 10 points, and diploma, at least for 2 years, full-time diploma, you have 5 points. And if you have studied in ACT for 4 years, you have 20 points. If you study for 3 years, you have 15 points, 2 years, you have 10 points. And then if you study for 1 year, you have 5 points. And of course, if you have families, maybe family ties in Canberra, that is your immediate family members now, either yourself, either your husband or your partner, your spouse or partner, or your children, they live in ACT and they have lived there for 2 years and they are permanent residents or citizens, then you will get 20 points for having a family member in ACT who is a resident. You have 20 points. And then if you have an extended family members, extended means excluding your cousins, your aunts, whatever. It only means your siblings and your parents. If your sibling, your parents or grandparents have lived in this city for 2 years and they are resident, you will have 10 points. So the ideal thing you should do basically is compute your points. Put all these things together and simulate your points, what you can have. And I will advise put worst case scenario so that you will not be deceiving yourself before, by the time you get to ACT. Be realistic that can I get these points? If you are able to get minimum of 65 points at the end of the day, then I can say there is hope for nomination, either as under 491, But if you score higher points, say you have 75 and above, then 119 is sure for you. So generally, this is good for people who have lived in a city for at least 1 year and who also worked in a city. And perhaps it's also good or better if they are working currently in their nominated occupations and those occupations are on critical list. It's good for them. So the best thing to do is to compute your point and see. Then another thing I need to add to this is if you have money, sufficient money that you want to invest, maybe you and your partner, you have $250,000 that you want to invest in residential property or commercial property, that is 5 points. 5 points. Then if you have 200,000 and you want to purchase a business or you want to establish a new business, you have 5 points. Of course, you have to prove it. You can't just say, I want to purchase. You must have done that and then you must show evidence. So you have extra 5 points. Then another thing is, if you have money that you want to invest in maybe a startup technological business, an existing business that you want to invest in, and you have 200,000 that you want to use for that investment, you have 200, you have 5 points. So you can actually use 750,000 to gain 15 points, to tell you how scarce point is. So now let's look at ACT Matrix Scenario. Say, for example, as an applicant, you have lived in ACT between 1 to 2 years. That's extra point. Proficient English, 10 points. Spouse qualification and competent English, 5 points. At the end of the day, if you have, say, add this together, you already have more than 75, which is okay for 190. It's okay for 190. Also, your professional year in ACT also counts. It counts. If you study or have professional year can't be more than 1 year. It's just 1 year. So it also counts to study, count for points. So I just need to let us know that. The general advice is that try and simulate your points on Canberra Matrix. Simulate your point on Canberra Matrix and see what you can come up with. I've looked at it. I think Canberra Matrix actually favors couple more than singles. It favors couples more than singles. But of course, a single person who has lived in ACT for, say, for 2 years or 1 year and working in a nominated occupation will still be fine. But I'm just saying, looking at that scenario, getting those points together. Then also, I've said, study in Canberra, if need be. Study in Canberra. Your study may be in any course. So long you study in Canberra for certain number of years, you will get some points. Then advice would be study courses that are related to occupations on critical list. I believe by now we know the list, and the list may change tomorrow. But from all indications, the list may not change until July. So the list may not change until July. And if at all changes come in July, it may not be massive. As you all know that Australia is still recovering. It's still under economic recovery at the moment as a result of COVID-19. So GSM, General Scheme Migration, is no longer going, will not be popular as such. And that's the reason why 189 invitation has now is now being done every three months, starting from January. And they are only considering occupation on priority skill occupation list. Only occupations on priority skill occupation list. This is a list where they've just extracted few occupations, about 18 occupations that are critical to Australian economic and health recovery. Majorly health nurses, some engineers, and ICT occupations. And then social work. They introduced social worker recent in, I think that should be around November. So the list may be updated from time to time, but for now, they are only working on 18 skill occupations. And they've said they'll be doing invitation every three months. So the next invitation now will be in April. And probably that will be the last for this financial year. So in other words, 189 is technically dead. Seek for a professional advice. That is other important advice I will I want to give you. And with that, I wrap off. Thank you. So I'm open for